you today. This is good. Oh, okay. All right. Here we go. 7 seconds.
I'm a little tired this morning, so we're gonna roll with it.
And good Thursday morning, or as we like to think of it, Friday Eve. 4 minutes past 10 o'clock, 57 degrees. Time for KRIM's Community Spotlight. And with us today from the Payson Unified School District, we have Katrina Sacco. She is is it Sacco or Sacco?
I say Sacco.
Sacco, maybe. And just want to make sure I'm getting it right. She's the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment for the Payson Unified School District. Also, Eric Drake, he's an instructional coach over at JRE. And now to begin with, let's kind of set the stage here. Katrina, I was really intrigued, just before going on the air here, you mentioned that you spent 10 years over in Red Rock area. Rimrock area, excuse me, and really worked your way up from a student teacher all the way into administration.
Yeah, I love the Beaver Creek School District. If there's any Creekers out there, go Bobcats. Yep, I used to volunteer. I actually got my original degree in hotel and restaurant management, worked in restaurants for a little bit, and then I started volunteering at the local school.
Yeah, restaurants and hotels will make you change your mind.
The decisions we make when we're young, right?
Oh, yes, indeed.
And then I became a student teacher, taught there for a few years, went into administration and became the principal of Beaver Creek School, which was just a wonderful place to be.
Man. And now you're here in Payson, and you've been here for what, a little over a year?
A little bit over a year.
Yeah.
Yep.
How's that transition been for you?
You know, it was a big transition for me, moving from what I call the daily noise and hustle of being at a school campus to being in the district office, which it just feels very different. But luckily I have people like Eric here to show me around their campuses, so I can go and still experience that kind of the joy of teaching and learning. That was hard to leave behind, but it's still very present in my life. It's just different because I'm in the district office. But luckily, when I get stressed out, I could go see Eric and say, let's go see some classroom.
There you go. Well, now, and Eric, again, title is instructional coach, and that title just got changed this year, right?
That's right. Last year, it was the student achievement teacher. We changed it midway through last year, trying to kind of rebrand and refocus what our instructional coaches were doing. We want to make sure that they're really intentionally focused on improving student outcomes. So supporting teachers to have the best instruction in their classrooms and to constantly be growing.
Right. And so, Eric, that's got to take you down a lot of different paths, I would think.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an outside perspective in an intimate circumstance. Classroom is relationships between students and teachers, and I'm familiar and comfortable in classrooms. I've been there for a while, and having an outside teacher's perspective gives insight into things that teachers might not notice.
And your specific focus is over at Julia Randall Elementary School.
That's correct.
Okay. And now, do they have similar people with your position at the other schools in the Payson Unified School
That's
District?
correct. I've got a team. We got 4 instructional coaches in the district.
Oh, wow. And that's got to be a slightly uniquely different challenge at each one of the schools. I mean, just because of the demographics, if you will, and everything. Interesting. And of course, also with us, as always, we have our intern with us this morning. And one of the things that I'm anxious to get your perspective on this morning is, Ashland, is that you've gone through how many years of school here in Payson? You're a senior this year, but how many have you gone all the way through school here?
Oh my, let's see, I moved here, I would say maybe the end of kindergarten, beginning of first grade.
That's pretty much the whole deal, though. I mean,
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I don't know. I'm anxious to get your perspective, Ashland. I look back at 1,000 years ago when I was in school, that there was a few different teachers that really left a lasting impact on me that I still carry with me to this day. Have you had some experiences like that as well?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And what was it about those teachers that really left that impression with you?
I think just their teaching style and how compassionate they were for their students, and how much they loved their job, and they really showed it.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Eric, when it comes to being that other set of eyes in the classroom, I think Ashland brings up a pretty interesting point, because there's a lot of emotional aspects to this that just kind of, I'm not going to say exacerbate, but I mean that just complicate the educational process perhaps at times, and keeping that all in perspective is kind of a unique challenge, I imagine.
It can be. I would put it on the other side though. It doesn't make it more challenging. If you get that emotional connection with your kids, with your students, that makes the teaching easier.
Ooh, perspective, I like that. Yeah, that's good.
It's an entirely different skill set that teachers need to develop as they go, and most universities at this point actually teach classes on how to build those relationships with students.
So now, are you actually helping the teacher with that? As far as, hey, maybe, you ought to think about this or that? I mean,
That's precisely what I do.
wow. That's good. And imagine there are times where that's well received, and there's times where it's like, maybe not.
I'm gonna go with not a JRE. All of our teachers are
Ah.
superstars, and they all adapt and grow continuously.
And
I'm
you're
not really exaggerating. They're really great.
Oh, I thought maybe you were running for political office or something. That's very good, though. All kidding aside, I mean, it just really makes sense. And Katrina, with being the director of curriculum, instruction, and assessment, I mean, curriculum is one thing, but assessment and instruction, I mean, that's a pretty broad realm of things that you have to concern yourself with.
It is broad. I work very closely with Linda Gibson, our superintendent, who is fabulous.
She's a
and
sweetheart.
yeah, she's a wonderful, wonderful school leader as well. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades in taking school leadership and putting it at the district level. What I've really been focused on is providing it's kind of like some guidance on how we could unify practices across the school district. We became a national showcase district for capturing kids' hearts this year, which we are extremely proud of, and that's probably one of the reasons why Eric's teachers are so willing to have feedback on those personal relationships. We call it building relational capacity with kids, and that's kind of like the foundation of everything we do. So everything we do starts with this idea that we are building relationships with kids and building kind of a community and an environment for learning. And then on top of that comes instruction, assessment, and then curriculum is typically what we use curricular resources to meet those goals.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about, the relationships, because when I look back at what we were talking about as far as the teachers that you look back with fond memories that, maybe had a big impact on you, at least in my life, it seems like it was always the teachers that really did develop a personal relationship with you, where there were others that, along the road that, seemed like they were just kind of punching their time card and waiting for 5 o'clock or the end of the school year or the end of, the next step to retirement or whatever. But the relationships, I mean, that's actually grown to be a pretty significant focus then.
Yeah, it's kind of
I love
interesting
it.
because I think it used to be just a feeling some of us had about education and our purpose in it, and then a growing body of evidence has illuminated the fact that this is actually what makes kids successful. So schools where kids feel confident and they feel welcome and they feel like they want to grow and learn with their teachers, those are the schools that are more successful. So I think it's kind of, I'm a little bit of a research geek, I think Eric is too. So it's neat when what your heart has always told you, you learn is actually true. And that's cool.
That's good confirmation there, yeah. Now, one of the things, and I want to make sure we can dive into some of this before we're out of time, but one of the things that seems like it would, more than just about anybody else in the school district, would impact the two of you and or people with the same job, is for the last year and a half with all of this coronavirus nonsense going, I mean, not nonsense, but I mean, with the pandemic going on, man, that's just thrown a whole bunch of tough challenges at not only the schools, but the students and the learning process and everything else. I would think that has got to be the weirdest twist that y'all have run into in your careers thus far.
Horribly taxing on students and teachers.
Yeah.
As well as I think the rest of us, but really, of course, our kids being home, it's heartbreaking. It's been a hard year. They're behind now, and there's a lot of consequences to them not being engaged with their peers. The list goes on and on of the challenges that the pandemic has created for kids. And for teachers have been asked to do things that they never were asked before. They've had to learn incredibly fast. Over the last 20 years, teaching has become much more technical, and the expectations continue to grow every year beside the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, it was just accelerated like massively. And our teachers are doing an amazing job, and they really need our community's support and to hear that from us.
Makes sense. You know, one of the things that also comes to mind when you're saying that is that I think, most of us have probably heard stories about some kids that, the home life is not really the best. And man, being able to get out of there and go to school is huge. And so then along comes a pandemic, and you can't leave and go to that, perhaps more peaceful place or whatever you want to call it at school during the day. And people, especially people in your specific positions, I would think that would be some pretty heart-wrenching stuff when you know that some of those kids are truly slipping between the cracks, emotionally or whatever for a while all this is going on.
Well, sure, that's a challenge that we have to meet, and we don't want to leave any kid slipping between the cracks.
Right.
One of the ways that Julia Randall is dealing with this is we have one of our electives, or not electives, one of our specials is our STAR class, and it's a social emotional learning class. So along with learning PE and building up the body and the strength, they work with the emotions and the structure of how to deal with those challenges and coming back and reintegrating.
Yeah, because there's no emotions in kids in school these days, right? Sorry.
Only on days ending in Y.
Right, exactly. I mean, gosh, we could do a whole talk show just on that one aspect there. But and what about you, Ashlyn? I mean, the last year and a half or so, I mean, what's that been like for you as a student, being, maybe away from the kids that you like to hang around with, or maybe there's classes that you really, get a major kick out of being a part of, and I know you've done drama and things like that. That had to be, it had to be taking some of the fun out of your regular routine, I would think.
Oh my, I can go on and on and on about this.
Really?
So I think the hardest thing, especially for me and my family, was that at my house, especially in Gaisila, we don't have the best internet. So,
Matter of fact, I'd say you're pretty close to the other end of the spectrum.
Oh, it was terrible. Like, I would get kicked out of my class almost every 5 to 10 minutes, and that would end up me having a mental breakdown, and I'd be crying. So then I found out that we had this one thing for the school that you could come in and do online school in a classroom of some sort, with some friends. And so I went there, and I actually got really close with one of my friends there.
Oh.
So that was really nice to
So you've worked your way through it regardless of the challenge, but I mean that had, and I'm sure you have friends that have shared similar stories about what a pain in the neck and other body parts this whole thing has been.
Definitely.
Okay, just amazing stuff. Now the STAR class, I think Katrina, I think you mentioned it earlier. This is one of the things that you're doing to help support students and their well-being. Now, how long has STAR been around?
Just this year, and I think Eric could speak to it best since he's at JRE.
Right, this is a new program this year to help deal with kids who are struggling from recovering from the pandemic, because they weren't in school last year. They didn't have the chance to develop that relational capacity we talked about earlier with their teachers or their other students, and being isolated makes it more difficult. So we have a veteran teacher developing this STAR class through the CKH, so the Capturing Kids' Hearts program, in order to help foster those skills and teach those students to have that emotional and social background that they missed out on.
And STAR is an acronym?
Yes, but I don't remember what it stands for.
Stuff, and I forget what the rest of it
The
is.
way
Right.
I understand it is the kids are stars and they're learning to excel and shine.
Gotta love
And
it.
the kids are all over that.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, okay, so the kids are all over that. What about the parents?
The parents have been fairly supportive of all of the things that we're doing, and we're very grateful for that. What I've learned about Payson since I've been here a little over a year is that it's a really close-knit community, and parents want what's best for their kids, and they know that we want what's best for their kids as well. There have been times where we have been hoping to connect more with parents, and what we really want is all parents to show up to every single parent-teacher conference and every single family night so that we can share stories about their kids and talk about the things that they're doing well and think about what we could do to partner to make things easier for them. And unfortunately, that isn't really the case because the pandemic and real life, regular life, are keeping people a little bit more busy trying to recover. I think just daily things that we used to take for granted are taking more time, and parents are not as present as we wish that they would be at this time.
So from your perspective, with everything that you're focused on, what are some things that you think parents, just generally speaking, can do to help students progress better in school?
So starting with our youngest learners, our little longhorns over at PES, when you think about the length of time that those kids were affected by the pandemic compared to the span of their life so far, it's a really big chunk of time. And that means that those kids haven't had the same access to adults who are setting models, like they're being role models for literacy. So they really need to be hopefully supporting us by sitting down with their kids and reading every night, spending as much time as possible talking, asking questions, and reading. And that can be the adult reading with the kid following along, the adult simply reading to the kid exploring a book and looking at the print and the pictures together, but just having quality time with an adult where they're having literate conversations.
Well, wait, this sounds like I gotta turn the TV off.
Yeah. That brings up a great point. There's a researcher, his name is John Hattie, and we really like his research because what it does is it shows all of the different factors that occur in a student's life and kind of brings it down to a small, it's called an effect size. So what factors have the biggest effect on student achievement? And student achievement is just a number. It's basically how well they perform on a test, which of course is not the whole child. But we know that television, the length of time that students are watching television during the day, if it's 3 hours or more, it has a pretty large negative effect on their student achievement. And there's a lot of other factors. We hone in on the things that we can control, but there's also a lot of outside factors like things that occur in the home, socioeconomic status, those kids that are struggling with, domestic violence or other circumstances that may not be as severe as that, really have a large effect in the classroom.
Yeah. So far, though, radio seems to be doing great. Sorry. Now,
Too easy.
yeah, I know. I go for the cheap shots. Now, one of the things we want to talk about, because we're running out of time here, but you have some different programs that we want to find out a little bit more about. The first is ACT. ACT. What is that all about?
So ACT, when I was in high school, used to be only for students who were interested in going to college.
Okay, the ACT exam.
Yeah, but this year, it's actually being used as our state assessment. So our schools are measured based off of the state assessments. Previously, it was the AZ Merit, before that AIMS. Right now, it will be the ACT for our 11th graders. 9th grade has ACT Aspire, which is kind of like the pre-test. Have you taken either of those yet?
I believe I'm taking the ACT now.
Okay, so she may have insight on it. Insider information.
Inquiring minds want to know.
The AASA is also a new assessment this year. It is for 3rd through 8th graders. It covers reading, writing, and math. It replaces the AZM2. And the kind of interesting thing about that assessment that I'm most interested in right now is that the 3rd graders will be measured on their reading fluency. So how many words they read per minute, which is something that we've always considered best practice to measure in grades kindergarten through 3rd grade. It's a really high indicator of how much they will comprehend as they grow older and become more proficient readers. And then the Galileo is something that we internally use. So the Galileo is a test that we're using this year from kindergarten through 12th grade to assess those same areas, but just for what's called a district benchmark.
So with Galileo, is the main objective just trying to reassure people that the world is actually round? Or
Partially. So the Galileo can
a
be
cheap
used.
shot, I'm sorry.
It can be used for a lot of different things. My favorite reason to take the Galileo is so that teachers have quality information about what their students know, what they're ready to learn, and what is far beyond the scope of what they're ready to learn. So then teachers have actionable data in their classrooms to use to instruct, and that's the most important reason. Another reason we use Galileo is to predict performance on the ACT or the, now it's called the AASA. And so that way we kind of have a barometer of where we are versus where the state wants us to be. And then of course, just so that we can share with the community, hey, how are our kids doing?
Right, and looking at it from the perspective of Julia Randall Elementary School, Eric, looking at the early grades and knowing that, there's a lot of fundamental stuff that needs to be happening right then to get them ready for all this stuff coming down the pike later on. How are we doing that way in your opinion?
I think we're actually really doing well. Our students are growing at a faster rate than they normally would because they have to make up some lost time.
Right.
And one of the things that I really like about the Galileo is a tool that we have is it's flexible. It's not always a great big long giant test. You can create little bitty tiny quizzes, and the quizzes and the tests that you create with that tool reflect the language used in the state assessment.
Okay.
So it's kind of a practical way to prepare the kids to show what they know on the test, even though like Katrina said, it's not the whole child, but that's how they're graded.
Wow, interesting. And now when it comes to again the elementary school, what tests are happening in first through fifth grades? When it comes, there's I'm sure there's some kind of assessment work that's being done along the line there as well. Are there the same kind of things that we're dealing with later on in high school and things like that, like with the ACT and all that?
Almost exactly the same thing, just at a complexity rate that's appropriate for the
Sure.
grade level involved.
Wow.
The one test that we didn't mention it's called a cadence. We use it as this year the state has required a specific type of screening tool. It's got those little 1-minute reads where kids read as many words as they can in a minute, a small comprehension test. They're little snapshots of where kids are, and we administer them 3 times a year.
Wow. How long does it take kids to take a test like that?
Well, a test like that, it takes the administrator a lot longer because they have to go through it, having some growing pains with the amount of time that it takes for kids to test.
Okay.
And we love the information we get out of it, but it's a lot of testing sometimes.
Sure. Well, now if a parent is listening right now and they're thinking, wow, this is interesting, but I've got questions, is there a place they can turn to get the questions answered?
Yes. Please feel free to reach me at 928-472-5754.
All right. And again, that number to contact, again, Katrina, 928-472-5754. And don't forget that nowadays you have to dial all 10 of those numbers. It's not as easy as it used to be. But gosh, when I first came to Payson, you only had to dial the last 4.
Really?
Because everybody up here was 474 back in the day. And so it was, well. And then there was the problem with the dinosaurs and all that. It was terrible. But anyway, once again, thank Katrina Sacco and also Eric Drake for coming down and being with us this morning from Payson Unified School District. Thanks a lot for the information. We look forward to talking again. All right, have a great one. And meanwhile, we got to get you back to more of your favorite music. Have some tunes coming up from Three Dog Night, The Byrds, Fleetwood Mac, and a whole bunch more. But first, a quick look at RIM Country weather.
Now with this
Thank
morning's
you.
cable weather.
Just like that.
I'm glad that on-site support services helped you.
The